Good evening and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. Sorry for running a few minutes late, but I had technical difficulties that were absolutely beyond my control, but I'm here. Happy Wednesday. We are halfway through the week and we are just a few days into March, and it feels like it's been a month. And I'm happy to be here tonight because I'm talking about something that is a need for me in my life right now, a need for me in my practice right now, and something that I felt really convicted to share. Um, if you guys have never caught one of my lives before, my name is Naomi. I go by the How To Chick. I'm a child of God, a wife, a mom, an attorney, a coach, a mentor, and a speaker. But most importantly, I believe that you can do anything, but you can't do everything and you must choose wisely. And I'm here Wednesday night as always. I usually come on at 9 p.m. on the dot Eastern Standard Time. And when I say usually, that is really aspirational. You guys know I tend to run a few minutes late, but I'm going to be very brief tonight. I'm talking about the concept of stillness because in the chaos and confusion that is surrounding many of us in our day-to-day lives, with the barrage and the assault on our personal freedom, the changes in life as we know it, the assault on our dignity in many cases, and the feeling of anger and powerlessness that many of us experience, we can fall victim to something that often gets me, and that is this theory that I should be doing something. I should be doing more. I should be saying something. I should be and I have talked before about how dangerous it is to should yourself, to force yourself to find a justification to do something that either is not something that is your assignment or is not something that will help you in the moment. And for me, being busy is often something that I use as a distraction to keep myself from processing deeper and often more painful emotions. And I was forced to admit to myself this week that my busyness was distracting from anger. And as we all know, anger is primarily a secondary emotion, not always, but primarily a secondary emotion. And so I had to really sit with it and find out what exactly was wrong. What was going on with me? Why was I in such a state where I needed to be busy planning something, doing something at all times? And I was, tired and worn down. I mean, life is lifing. We're all very busy. Why was I, and this was my question for myself, so determined to stay busy, even in moments where I didn't have to? And you may be asking yourself this question, I'm signing up for this course and that thing. I'm running around. I'm taking time to, you know, invest in and investing is never a bad thing, but I'm investing in courses that I don't have the time to complete, right? I'm buying stuff to start hobbies that I don't have the time to complete or the space to store or even really a desire to do. It's just kind of an aspirational thing. Why am I just so determined to do in this space? And for many of us, the answer is that busyness, which is the opposite of what I came to talk to you about tonight, which is stillness, is a way that many of us use to distract ourselves from painful emotions. And I had to sit, like I said, and recognize that the painful emotion I was processing was anger, fear, frustration, right? And when I did that, I took some time and I sat in silence to really think about all of the feelings that I could feel in my body, but also all of the thoughts, all of the information that went into me getting to that place. And for many of us, even well before 2024, 2025, or even 2020, we were living with chronic stress in the body. We were living in a space where we got poor sleep. We were living in a place where we were eating to cover our feelings instead of to nourish our bodies. We were living in a space of anxiety and overthinking. We were living in a place where our mind body connection was broken. And we were consciously doing things with our body to distract us from processing what was going on in our minds. And when I thought about that, I said, it's time. Because for a well balanced nervous system, for a mind and a heart and a spirit that are at peace, to ensure optimal mental and physical health, stillness, the practice of not doing, right? The definition of stillness is the lack of movement, right? The lack of thought, the lack, right, of doing. And most people associate stillness with failure, futility, stuckness, or even laziness. But the daily craziness that bombards us from every direction is a direct assault on our nervous system. It's a direct assault sometimes on our sense of self. And there is something to be said about a practice. You guys know my favorite word is practice of stillness. Because for many people don't actually know this, but in the United States, the 40-hour work week was a novel concept that was not in play in the rest of the world. And if you travel around Europe, and if you have at any clip, you'll recognize that most people do not adhere to a standard 40-hour work week. Yes, there are people who work in the markets who work with other countries who may, but they don't. And there's a hustle culture, right, that America was built on. There are seasons, right, where anybody has to work 8, 12, 15 hours a day because you're trying to do something, you're trying to accomplish something. But stillness, the practice of doing nothing, is actually built into most cultures that are not ours. Stillness benefits our mind, stillness benefits our emotions, stillness benefits our health, because it actually has been proven in studies that the practice, choosing to actively engage with a practice of doing nothing, because stillness is the lack of movement. It's making a mental effort, because it does take effort to disengage with the things in your life, whether they are good or bad. You're not planning, you're not preparing, you're not thinking. If you're a woman, especially if you're neurotypical like me, that really means closing those browser tabs down. Sometimes my computer is acting up, right? And I have to close it down. So I'm control alt deleting and closing everything. And I know that for my browser, if I do that, it's going to actually close the tab. So I don't want to do that. So I just manually turn my computer off with the browsers wide open, knowing that when I turn my computer back on and open up the browser, the first things it's going to say is, do you want me to restore the tabs you had open? Now, for better or worse, acknowledging that sometimes the things that I'm planning for, thinking about, focusing on, or even considering are not necessary and are either distractions themselves or are things that are outside of my control. And I'm actually filling space and allowing for worry and anxiety to be a part of my life by having them. Disregarding all of that, I have the option to say, I'm not going to think about that today. I'll just think about that tomorrow. You always have that option. And when you do that, when you decide, I'm not going to address the past due bills, I'm not going to think about the tuition that needs to be paid, I'm not going to worry about what's going to happen with my job, I'm not going to consider whether or not we have to move today, tonight, right now, in this moment. Because sometimes you have to be very concrete with your brain. I know I do. My brain is like, look, you're being irresponsible. And I'm like, no, I'll think about it tomorrow. But tonight, I'm not thinking about it. It reduces it reduces chronic, not constant, chronic stress. And I haven't dealt with chronic stress for a few years, but I suffered from generalized anxiety disorder. And as a part of that, my therapist and my doctor recognized that I was actually living in a place where my stress level at borderline was so high. My doctor was so amazed. I'm not going to even say what she said, but she was very amazed because my blood pressure was still within range. Because by all measures, by all accounts, by everything that I was reporting, and by all of the ways that I was allowing stress to affect my life, I should have had chronic hypertension. I should have, had some other underlying health issues. I attribute that right to my prayer life. You guys know, unapologetically a God girl. However, there are many people who have allowed chronic stress to invade their lives, worrying about things outside their control, and they are suffering ill health effects. I had a colleague, and this is why I've made this a practice. I was 27 or 28 years old, and I was working in an attorney general's office, and I was working with an older prosecutor. And she was probably in her late 40s at the time. And she told me I had a heart attack when I was 36 years old because I was so stressed and so overwhelmed with everything that was going on. She had two kids at home. Her husband had a busy job, and she was running all of these cases by herself, and she didn't know how to say enough. She didn't know how to say I can't. She never said no at the office. So she was trying to do it all, and the stress actually gave her a heart attack at the age of 36, and it was so bad because nobody recognized, because she worked out, she was in excellent shape. Nobody recognized that she was having a heart attack. And so she wasn't treated for quite some time, and she has symptoms, not symptoms, like physical weakness and issues that have continued in her body to this day as a result of a heart attack that she had now, 15, 20 years ago. And so when she told me that, it really stuck with me because she was telling me this when I was pregnant with my second son. And she was like, you need to recognize when enough is enough and when enough is too much. And you need to be willing to draw the line. And many of us aren't able to do that because we're so focused on the things that are outside of our control, and we're allowing the stress to build in our body. So stillness helps with chronic stress. The second thing is stillness actually helps with our emotional balance. The main function of busyness is often to distract us from the things that we should be doing within our control and from the things that have hurt us and the people that have hurt us. Stillness actually allows us to process our emotions without overwhelming our nervous system. Stillness requires that we allow ourselves to feel the emotions. We may recall what was said, what was done, how we felt, but doing so in a place of stillness, allowing your body and mind the space to reset, and allowing the thoughts and the feelings to flow through you without judgment towards yourself, the situation, or the other person, actually leads to increased emotional stability and emotional resilience. It lowers your mood swings, ladies. It keeps you from going off, because many times we are reacting and we are not responding. So choosing to wait and handle a volatile emotion, a painful thing, a hurtful thing, an angering thing in a place of stillness is a way to ensure that your response is appropriate to the situation. Stillness improves sleep quality. I don't think I need to elaborate on that. Many times we're up late nights worrying, wondering, stressing. Close the tabs. Make a conscious decision that you are not going to think about that. And in stillness, allow your emotions to wash over you, your feelings about what has happened, and engage with those without judgment. That is what stillness allows you to do. Because in many situations, we're processing at breakneck speed, trying to force ourselves to respond and fix things that in many cases truly can't be fixed. People's opinions, people's belief systems, for better or for worse, are not within our control. And sometimes when we engage in a practice of immediate responses, defensive responses, keeping ourselves on high alert at all times, we interfere with our own processing of our emotions. We interfere with our sleep. We interfere with our stress levels. So the next thing that stillness does is it increases our creativity. Now, I always say I'm not a creative person, but the most creative I ever am is in moments of stillness, because stillness allows mental clarity. I probably said this last week, and I'll probably say it a dozen more times. When you have a computer, my computer is 8 or 9 years old, still works, it's great. But if I have Safari, Chrome, and Firefox open and 38 browsers open in each of them, it's going to run a little slow, right? That's the way that we allow busyness to cause lag in our own lives and to keep us from actually doing and accomplishing the things that we want to do and accomplish. Stillness supports mental clarity. When you close all of those tabs, all of them, and then now you want to open up a new Word document, right? And create. Now you don't have lag. There's nothing more frustrating when you're trying to, I was trying to edit a document today and I'm in the same boat. I had about, I don't know, 17 extra large PDFs open. My computer was running at a crawl and I was trying to edit a Word document and it was moving so slowly that my brain was so, I couldn't even focus because I was so frustrated. Mental clarity is necessary for creativity, and we need creativity for so much of what we do. Creativity is not just art and music. It's not just creating songs and painting and all of that. Creativity is the things that we do in our lives. It's the ideas that we have, right? To go on vacations with our families. It's the way that we organize our home and our lives. It's the way that we're able to think of a new way to do an old thing at work. Creativity is important, and each one of us utilizes it, whether we know it or not. So, whether you are an entrepreneur, a problem solver, a thinker, or even an artist, adding a practice of stillness into your days can be a game changer for you. It can allow you to operate at a higher level. I have experienced a ton of breakthroughs when I've actively practiced stillness. Um, there are a number of other important ways that stillness helps. The primary one for me has always been reducing anxiety and overthinking. These are common symptoms of a dysregulated nervous system. And I talked a few years ago about how I worked on regulating my nervous system. Stillness helps quiet the mind. In that space, when you're able to reduce the mental chatter, and for my type A ladies, that stream of consciousness of your own voice telling you all the things that you did wrong and forgot and didn't do perfectly, that is what fuels anxiety. A habit of stillness allows you to recognize that voice. The Bible says that we should take every thought into captivity. And in many cases, we have so much going on that we don't even recognize the litany and the constant stream of thoughts that we have and the mental chatter, even our own voice that is condemning us. So we're not able to address it. We just know we feel worse and worse. We feel more anxious. We feel more stressed. We feel less accomplished. To break the cycle of overthinking, stillness is necessary. When you start feeling badly, stop. You're trying to do something and it's not going well, and all of a sudden you're beating yourself up. Oh, I'm a failure. I'm never any good. I don't do anything well. Stop. Don't keep trying to do it. Don't try to refute those thoughts in that moment. Stop everything if you can. Go to a place of stillness, confront those thoughts, and tell them the truth. We've talked about this before. Tell those thoughts the truth of who you are. And then in that moment of stillness, once you've dealt with the thoughts, close down everything and allow your mind to deal with your emotions, the negative emotions that were brought up by that mental chatter, that voice of judgment. And once you've dealt with that, all of those things, the mental chatter, the voices of judgment, those thoughts that you aren't good enough, that you're going to fail, that this is not your forte, that other people are going to judge you, or whatever it is. Once you've handled those thoughts in your mind, go to a place of complete stillness and watch the mental clarity that you need to complete whatever it is come right then. Stillness works. Stillness promotes the best decision making. The worst decisions are made when we are in the heights of emotions, fear, Probably the worst decision making there is fear. Second worst probably is anger. But making decisions at the height of emotion usually leads to poor outcomes. And having a dysregulated nervous system means that you're always at the height of an emotion, and that emotion is typically going to be anxiety. When your nervous system is balanced, you make your decisions with better clarity. You make your decisions with more confidence. And the mental stillness that you have allows you the bandwidth to process the pros and cons of those decisions effectively. So you will have fewer regrets when you make thoughtful and informed choices. You just do. It's important as a parent, it's important as a leader, it's important as a business owner to make your decisions from a place of thought, from a place of an informed decision, not because we're making 1,000 decisions a day. So that's why we have to practice stillness. And I'll say this, I was reading an article in a business review. I want to say it was Harvard. It was either Columbia or Harvard. And they actually talked about a practice of stillness being something that is taught to leaders, CEOs, and decision makers in high stress environments. Because when you are constantly having people come to you and ask you questions, and you're constantly having to render decisions, and the decision that you make is going to be the deciding factor for what the company does, what the hedge fund does, what your organization is doing, and that decision could have huge consequences. It's important that you're regulated enough to make decisions that are going to have the most utilitarian outcome. And again, thoughtful and informed decisions are hard to make at the height of an emotion. So in business school, they're teaching a practice of stillness. This is something that each and every one of us can and should incorporate into our lives, because it actually facilitates a recovery for our nervous system. I talk all the time about prayer. I talk about journaling. All of that is a part of my practice of stillness, because whether you're recovering from burnout, trauma, chronic stress, or even a health condition, if you add stillness into your routine, it accelerates the healing process. Um, I talked in 2020 about a practice I developed for stillness, and this is when I was dealing with chronic stress and generalized anxiety disorder. I told you guys I went through the ringer, so I can tell you from personal experience how well it works. Starting your day with 5 to 10 minutes of quiet reflection. Be still. I think I said last week, and if I didn't, I'm saying it now. Psalm 46:10 is one of my favorite verses, and it's inspiring me in this season. It says, "Cease striving, be still, and know that I am God." So when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is pray. I pray. I start my day without, and I'm not praying about the things that are happening in that day. Although many days I'm praying for the strength to deal with whatever the day has, because the days have been pretty awful lately. But I'm also praying in gratitude, because I choose to fashion my days and come at my days from a place of gratitude. Mindful breathing, yoga, outside walks, even working out, but to a lesser extent. Like getting to a place where you're able to take your mind off of all the tabs is the purpose of stillness. I like to start my mornings with 10 to 20 minutes of prayer. And then if I pray for 10 minutes, then I'll journal for another 10 or 15 minutes. But during the day, whenever I get anxious or overwhelmed, whenever I have a big decision to make, I go on YouTube. I have a number of meditations that I use. I find a 7-minute and 11-minute meditation, and I walk and I deep breathe and I listen to my meditation. If I'm in my office, and if I'm at home, I may listen to one that I can lay down on my yoga mat or on my bed and do my deep breathing, because in stillness, we hear more clearly, we understand more clearly, and we move with more confidence. I also do this in the evening. I spend a few minutes in stillness before going to bed. Almost every evening, I journal before bed. And after or during the process of journaling, I sit in stillness, because my expectation is that as I'm speaking to God, He is also speaking to me. And it's hard to hear when you're talking. Stillness as a practice can be incorporated starting anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes a day. I know that when I talked about the practice that I had during the pandemic, I had 30 minutes in the morning, an hour in the afternoons, and about 45 minutes to an hour of an evening wind down. Your practice can be any length that you need, and it can incorporate any type of stillness that works for you. But it is important. It's important for your mind, it's important for your spirit, it's important for your body. It regulates your nervous system and it actually helps heal physical and emotional wounds. Listen, I don't make the science, I just tell you the science. So, in the chaos that we're surrounded with right now, with everything that's going on, with all the stress, with every day being really a lot for a lot of people, I want you to take some time to incorporate stillness into your daily life. And when you do so, come back and tell me how it worked out for you because I've been doing this now for about 5 years, maybe a little less, maybe close to 5 years. And it has caused me to be less reactive in conversations. It's caused me to be less self-critical. I don't take the things that people say or think about me or that I think people think about me personally. I don't think about right now what people think about me because that's not my business. And the practice of stillness gets, it's part of it. It gets me there. It gets me to the place where I'm able to accept that I can't control what's outside of my control. And so I have to focus on what's inside of my control. If you need healing, if you need peace, if you need to regulate your nervous system in the midst of the chaos and the confusion, to lower your overwhelm, to deal with chronic stress, I highly recommend that you implement the steps in the practice of stillness. Whatever your practice is, design it for yourself. Take time to sit in quiet. Take time to allow your spirit and your soul to be renewed. And when you've done so, tell somebody else about it. Remember, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. Choose wisely. Good night.